Welcome to the third episode of Noob Programming. Today we're going to learn how to build a simple calculator app, and we're going to learn how to use the segue controller in the process, which is basically this thing right here, which allows you to select one tab and do something based on that tab. So in this case, we're going to use it to select which operator we're going to use, and we're going to change the number. And then that will be our calculator app. Along with this, we're going to learn how to use slide over and split view on iPad. It's going to be really handy to have a calculator app that works in slide over and split view, but it's also a really nice thing to know to build your iPad apps. So let's get right into it. So we're going to start by opening Xcode and creating a new project as always. Create new project, single view application. We're going to give it a name, save it somewhere, and get right into the actual app. So we're going to go over to the main.storyboard, and let's start off by changing the color. Obviously changing the color isn't a necessary part of the process, but go for it. Now in previous episodes we had came over to this and we changed the size of this box here. We want to leave this as inferred. By leaving it at inferred, it will allow us to make our apps to be built on all devices. So it's going to work on a 4-inch iPhone, a 3.5-inch iPhone, a 4.7-inch iPhone, a 5.5-inch iPhone. That's going to work on the iPads, and what we really care about is it's going to work in split view really nicely. So the project defaults to working with split view. So if I take this label and put it right in the center of this app, you might expect that it's always going to be in the center, but that's not actually how it works. You're going to notice it's off to the side, and if I bring in split view, it just moves somewhere else. And it's going to look different on every device and every screen size, so what we have to do is we have to make it so that it knows where we want it to be. And we're going to do that with these three buttons over here. This one here, this one over here, and we're going to use that last one as well sometimes. I'm going to show you guys how to do that in a minute. So first we need to make this label do what we want it to do. And we're going to want it to span across the entire thing and be the answer label. So when you put in your calculation and get the answer, we want it to be right here. So I'm going to change this to 0. Make it a little bigger. And I'm going to change the background of it because I think that's going to look better. So I'm going to pick a color. Alright, I like that one there. So now we're going to need a text box. Let's get one of those. Let's actually get two of those. I'm just going to copy and paste it. This one over here. We need another couple labels. Put one there. And we got one over here. And we're going to need that segmented controller. So I'm going to put that in here. And we need a button. Okay, cool. Now let's make this actually look kind of good. So I'm just going to put a plus in there. This is going to be our operator thing here. You need to adjust the size of the label. This is going to be an equal sign. Going to make that the same size of 27 font. I actually think that should be a little bigger. Now let's take the text box and put it on this blue line over here. And drag this out, put this in the center. We're going to put this aligned to that. But we need to accommodate for the equal sign on this side. So this text box will actually be slightly smaller on the right side. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let's get some numbers in here. Okay, and I want that to be center aligned. Obviously, if you don't want yours centered aligned, you can go for it, but I kind of like it center aligned. So then we have this segmented controller right here. We're not going to touch that yet. The button is here. We're going to change this to calculate. So then with this segmented controller, we have this thing that says first and second. So obviously we need to change that. But first let's look at this. It says segment 0. So the way it works is it counts starting with 0. So if you have 4 of them, you actually are only going to have 0, 1, 2, and 3. It's kind of weird, but whatever. So we need 4, and so we're just going to tab that up, and we can see we get 2 more. And we can come in here and change them like this. So this one's going to be add. Let's stretch this out a little so we can see it. This one's going to be subtract. The second one, which is actually the third one in normal counting, but the second one in this, is going to be divide. And this one's going to be multiply. And we forgot to hit enter on that second one. So, alright. So there we have all of the things that we want. And as you can see, there's a selected box here. So if we go to this 0th one, we'd see that one is selected. So that is good. We do need to have one selected. We can only select one at a time though. And we're going to drag this out to the blue line over here and here. And we're just going to leave calculate in the center there. So now what we need to do is we need to set them up to be where we want them to be always. So let's start with the answer label up here. We're just going to come down to this button, or oops, this one here. And you can see where we have these things here. And basically it works with pixels versus the object that it's closest to. So for the top, that is just this top line here, which is 0. So we do want it to be on that 0 pixels away from that. And because we have it all the way to the edge, it's negative 20. That blue line we were talking about with the segue controller and the text box above it, that is the 0 line. So the border is actually negative 20, so that is fine. So we want top, these two, and we would like to keep the height the same. So we're going to add that, and it's looking pretty good, but we don't know how it's actually working right now. So we're going to go to the 2 circles at the top, and we have to hit automatic here, and we're going to change it to be preview. And now we get a nice preview here. We can flip-flop it over here. And as you can see, it's looking pretty good on that one. So that's good. So now let's do the label here in the middle with the plus sign in it. We're going to hit this one here with the bar above the other bar. And we want it to be horizontal, like directly in the center. So we want that, and we are going to hit add constraint, and then we have to come over to this one, and we have to add a couple more constraints to do exactly what you want. As you can see, if we just do the horizontal one, it's way up at the top here, and we don't want that. So we need it 32 from the label above it, and 8 from the 2 text boxes on the side of it, and we would like to keep the width and height the same. And as you can see, that messes up the text boxes around it, but that's alright because we're going to fix those now. So we're going to make this text box 27 from the label above it, right on that line, and hit add. So that's looking pretty good. So with this text box, we're just going to put 27 from the label above it, 8 from the label on the side of it, and we're going to hit add. Now obviously we have an issue with this label here, so we're just going to do on the 0 line, 31 from the label above it, keep the height and width the same, and everything is all better there. With the segmented controller, we want to make it 23 from the label above it, and on these 0 lines, and we're going to keep the height the same. Now, your pixel numbers may be different, that's alright, it's just based on where you place the objects. So don't worry about the numbers being different, that's completely fine. So with the calculate button here, we actually want it to be horizontal in the container, 15 from the segmented controller, and we want to keep the height and width the same. So that's looking pretty good. Let's try it on our iPad, and that is looking great. Now let's try it in slide over and split view, or just split view. Alright, awesome. I actually think this would look a little better if we made this a bit of a darker color, so I'm going to do that right now. Alright, that looks pretty good. So now all that we have to do is write the code. So we're going to come over to this, and we're just going to select automatic and hit view controller. Okay, so obviously the first thing we have to do is connect these to the view controller. So I'm going to start with the label, and I'm just going to call this label answer. I'm going to do the same for the text box, and remember, you can do this by a secondary click or holding down Control and dragging over. So this is going to be text user num1. This I'm going to make text user num2. This I'm just going to call label op for operation. The button I need as an action, so I'm just going to pull this over, call it button calc action, and change it to an action. And same thing with the segmented controller. All we have to do is pull it over. I'm going to call it seg ops for operations and make it an action. Okay, very good. So I'm going to start with the segmented controller. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an if statement to figure out which one is selected. But I've already realized I actually need to make an outlet for the segmented controller. So I'm going to call it seg ops, and I'm just going to call it outlet because I forgot to put the action over here. That would have been nicer because then I would just have, it'd be a shorter name, and that's the one where you type more often is the outlet one. So not a big deal, I'll just leave that like that because you can't have them as the same name. So if seg ops outlet, so then all we have to do is put the dot operator and put selected segment index is equal because equal is what we use to compare something, is equal to 0 because it starts at 0, and we're just going to put label op dot text equal the plus sign. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So now I just have to do the same thing for these other ones. So else if seg ops outlet dot selected segment index equal to 1, label op dot text is equal to the minus sign, else if seg ops outlet dot selected segment index is equal to 2, label op dot text equal to the division sign, which you have to find in the emoji keyboard. And all we have to do to pull it up is hit Control Command Space, and we can come in here and search divide. I'm going to pick this one right here. And then we can do else, because there's not going to be anything other than these 4, so we don't need to put in the 4th one. Label op dot text equal to the x for multiplication. And that's looking pretty good. So now we need to do the actual math, which is going to be up here in the button calc action. But first we're going to need some variables. So let's do var user num1, and I'm going to set it as a float because I want to. You could also do it as a double if you're feeling like it, but I'm going to do it as a float just because. The difference is float is a bit smaller, but we're just making a simple calculator here, so that doesn't really matter anyway, so I'm just going to take the smaller of the two. The smaller one does take up less space on the device, but it's not really an issue right now, but just something to note. So I'm going to make it equal 0.0 var user num2 float is equal to 0.0 var answer float equal to 0.0. So then all we have to do is set the variables equal to the text boxes. So all we're going to do is user num1 equals, and then we have to convert the text box, so it's going to be float parentheses text user num1 dot text explanation point to unwrap the text box, parentheses, and then we're going to put another explanation point for the float thing. That's going to unwrap that. So then we're just going to do the exact same thing for number 2. Now that's looking pretty good. So let's try out our app real quick. You can rotate the screen of the simulator just by doing Command arrow, so that's what I did. And if the keyboard's not showing up like that, all you do is hit Command K, and that brings up the on-screen keyboard. Okay, it wants to disappear for some reason. That is just to do with the simulator because you can connect a Bluetooth keyboard to a device, and then in that case the keyboard wouldn't show up on screen. Sometimes the simulator tries to disappear the keyboard, and if that happens, all you have to do is hit Command K. Alright, so everything's looking good except we don't have an answer yet. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm actually going to do it over here in the seg ops. For all of these, all I'm going to do is put answer equals user num1 plus user num2. I'm going to copy that, paste it to the subtraction one, and change this to a minus. Paste it again for division, and for division all we use is the slash like that, and for multiplication it's just a simple asterisk. So that's looking pretty good, but I don't need it to happen when we change the segment controller. I need it to happen every time we push the button. So I have to call this function up here, and all I have to do that is put segops, because that's the name of the action, and inside of it I'm going to put self, because this is connected to an object on the device. I need to do that. If it was just a normal function that we had created down here by doing func and then this thing, we wouldn't put self in there, but because this is connected to this object, we are putting self in there. So that's going to get called. Now we need to print it out to label answer. Okay, so now all we have to do is put it to the label. So label answer dot text is equal to answer right here. But we have to convert it to a string so it can be displayed in the label. So the way we're going to do that is we're just going to do string, and we're just going to put answer. So now that should work. Let's give that a go. So 2, 4, calculate. Alright, so that's working pretty good. Let's try some other ones. For divide, alright, multiply. It's working very well, but you may have noticed that this is a letter keyboard and not a number keyboard. So that's kind of an issue. So what we can do is we can come over here to the text box and we can change this to be a number pad, and we're going to do the same thing for this one. Now on iPad, it just shows the numeric thing at the top when you put. It's the same thing as when you push the number button, but on the iPhone you will actually see an entirely different keyboard. So as you can see, it comes up with the numbers. Now let's run that on the phone real quick to see what that keyboard looks like. Okay, so it didn't pop up. That's because I need to hit Command K, and there you can see there's the number keyboard. Now there is a number of different keyboards in here. You can pick between them, play around with them. They're pretty cool. Alright, so that's working pretty well, but there is a problem with this app right now. Basically, here's the issue. If you come in here and you're typing out your number, and then you accidentally hit the $sign, right? And then you come over here and you're typing out your number, and you're like, I want to subtract these, right? And then you push calculate. Oh no, the entire thing crashes. And the reason for that is you cannot convert something that has a $sign to a float. And that will work for anything. If there's nothing in the text box, or if there's anything other than a number that converts to a float, then we're going to have an issue. And you know what? We don't like to have issues, right? So we have to go ahead and we have to fix this. And the way we're going to do that is with an if statement. So I'm just going to push these in a little bit real quick with the tab button. And right here, I'm going to put my if statement. So if, and I'm going to put the conversion for float, and inside the parentheses, we're going to put text user num dot text exclamation point is not equal to. Not equal to is the exclamation point and the equal sign. That means not equal to. Not equal to nil. Nil means nothing. Then we're going to want to run this right here. But we're also going to get a crash from text box 2. So we have to do both text box 1 and text box number 2. And the way we're going to do and is with an and symbol. Float text user num2 dot text exclamation point, and we're going to set that to not equal to nil. Now if that is true, we are going to do this right here. If that is not true, so else, we need to display an error message. So we're going to do label answer dot text is equal to error. Now let's give that a go. So here I am, I'm typing my number, right? But I accidentally mistyped, a little bit of a typo in there. And here's my number over here. Now let's calculate. Error. All right, good. Now let's try it. Make sure it works on both of these. Okay, very good. Put a number in there. All right, so that works. Now we gotta come over here. Let's try it over here. Wonderful. So that is pretty much it for our calculator app. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you'd like to see in the future and what you thought of this episode, and if you have any questions or anything like that. More Noob Programming episodes coming in the near future. Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video.